Good morning, Chair, Honorable Senators. Thank you for the invitation. My name is Ernie Daniels, and I'm President and CEO of the First Nations Finance Authority and a member of the Salt River First Nation in the Northwest Territories. The First Nation Finance Authority is one of four institutions established under the First Nations Fiscal Management Act. Together, we form an opt-in First Nations-led framework that supports strong governance, fiscal responsibility, and access to affordable capital. This regime has been touted as Canada's most successful sectorial governance initiative in its history. FNFA is First Nations owned and governed. Our board is made up of active chiefs and councillors from our member nations. We are self-sufficient and do not require core operational dollars from Canada. We raise all our financing monies in the capital market and relend it to participating First Nations to finance infrastructure and economic development projects aligned with community priorities. We have a proven track record, and our bonds are sought after by many institutional investors. In 2014, we issued our first $90 million bond with a single A credit rating, very historic at the time. Today, FNFA has delivered over $4 billion in financing to First Nations projects and governments and holds a AA rating from 3 separate credit rating agencies. We have done this with 0 defaults and generating over 40,000 jobs and have contributed an estimated $8 billion in economic impact. We are here today as part of the pre-study of Bill C-15. We believe it is important to appear because Budget 2025 signaled a shift towards using financing tools, not just annual program spending, to address long-standing infrastructure and economic gaps in First Nations communities. We know that the Government of Canada is faced with a problem related to infrastructure on reserve, and we, the FMA institutions, come with concrete solutions and practical tools to give wins to all parties involved. The Standing Committee on Indigenous People heard from Manny Jules, Chief Commissioner at the First Nations Tax Commission, that strengthening First Nations tax authority is central to self-determination and economic growth. Bill C-15 advances that objective by expanding and clarifying First Nations tax powers. And the FNFA works to ensure those fiscal tools can support affordable financing, infrastructure delivery, and long-term economic participation. Budget 25 also announced that the government's intention to amend the First Nations Fiscal Management Act to enable for FNFA to lend to Indigenous special purpose vehicles. This is welcome and overdue. Across Canada, First Nations are participating in major economic and resource projects through special purpose vehicles, often alongside federal or provincial loan guarantees. Today, FNFA cannot lend to those entities, even where a government guarantee already exists. The consequences are immediate. Higher borrowing costs, missed opt-in windows, and lost equity and generational opportunities for First Nation, the very reason that FNFA was created in the first place. Budget 2025 gets the intent right. What we need now is timely legislative action and clear implementation, because these projects move on market timelines. Budget 2025 also points to continued work on bonding and surety, and here I am optimistic. On-reserve contractors face structural and equitable barriers to accessing surety and bonding, not because of performance risk, but because of Section 89 of the Indian Act. Assets on reserve cannot be pledged as security, therefore are not able to execute an enforceable indemnity agreement. The government's intention to explore a bonding and surety backstop pilot is a meaningful step. This is one of the most direct ways to turn Indigenous procurement commitments into real participation, real jobs, increased productivity, and lasting capacity. The policy direction is sound. Now we need execution. Finally, I want to address monetization of government transfers. It is a financing tool that we already use and would allow for more infrastructure to be built now based on predictable future revenues, in this case, federal transfers that already exist and are already intended for infrastructure. Municipalities have used this approach for generations. For First Nations, monetization would allow communities communities to accelerate construction, reduce exposure to inflation and delay, and create durable assets that can be maintained over the long term. This project, with critical support from the First Nations Infrastructure Institute, will transform and help close the widening infrastructure gap in our communities. Budget 2025's commitment to explore a standalone monetization pilot is significant because it focuses on making existing funding more effective. That is sound fiscal policy and aligns with productivity, reconciliation, and long-term prosperity of nations. We look forward to working with Canada as true partners to advance the work outlined in Budget 2025. Thank you. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Galvez. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. My question is for Ernie Daniels.
You support most of the provision on the budget, and that you think that this is going to impact positively the projects that are priority for the First Nations community. This is an important statement to do. However, my question is regarding the Part 5, Division 5 of the bill that will amend the Red Tape Reduction Act to give all ministers the authority to grant exceptions to a law or regulation. So you said that the projects has to be a priority for the community. So in the event that a minister needs to make an exception because of other type of project, interprovincial project, and we are talking a lot about new pipelines, energy grids, and trains. And so what is your position? How do you see ministers having the power to be exempt from all laws except for the criminal code to allow for projects to go ahead? Do you think it will, it can go as stopping the right that you have to be consulted and your prior consent?
Thank you. Really good question. One that I think, I would think that the ministers have to use their power wisely, because I know our communities, if there's something that's not going to go right, they're going to oppose it. And, I would hope that the ministers are going to consult us, regardless of the power they have, because I think it's really important. I heard the first ministers or premier speaking a couple of weeks ago. Every one of them that got up to the mic said they need Indigenous participation, equity participation in a lot of these projects that are going to go through. So if you're going to do that, you need to talk to the First Nations, but you also need to take into consideration forward. And I do think that they should, as a matter of practice and I guess precedent, work with our communities, because it's really important to get it right from the start.
Mr. Daniels, so I think that all the concerns that my colleagues have expressed with respect to post-Canada and are even more valid for this reduction of red tape, because as they explained, legislations remain, ministers go and come back, governments go and come back, functionaries go and come back. And so without a very detailed explanation of when are we going to make abstraction, when are we going to bypass some of these very, very important protections that we have in health, in labor. So do you find it a little bit vague and too much power on this provision?
Well, yeah, I think it is vague. I think there need to establish some kind of a procedure that's going to be acceptable to all parties, and I think that's going to be really important for the government to to put in place, because otherwise you don't have project certainty. If First Nations are going to oppose anything, they're going to oppose it, and they're going to do what they can, and they're going to go into court probably. And most of the recent court cases have been won by Indigenous First Nations that have been putting that forward. So I think it's really incumbent on the government to work through a process, establish a process that can be workable for all parties. I really strongly urge them to consider that.
Thank you,
So, Mr. Daniel, I want to congratulate your organism because you have a 4 billion loans so far, create a 40,000 job for the First Nation, and with zero default on loans, so it's pretty impressive. So I understand that in the budget 2025, government announced intention to amend the First Nation Fiscal Management Act, but we study C15 and some are there and other things are not there. So have you received any further details about the government intention regarding the Indigenous Special Purpose Vehicle as a tool?
Yes, thank you for that question. We are working right now with the government department that's responsible for this. It's CERNA, the Crown Indigenous Relations. We're working on the amendment right now. It's with the legislative drafters. We just want to make sure that it gets put into the next budget implementation bill. It missed this first budget implementation bill, and so that's what we want to see. So the intent and the intention is good, and we have a good working relationship with the department bringing this forward. So that's what we just want to. Any delay is just going to delay First Nations that really want to get in some of these projects, because we do have First Nations that are working together, Indigenous groups that are working together in a special purpose vehicle that want to access the FNFA for financing these projects that have a government loan guarantee. I'm going to ask my colleague Jody if she has anything else to add. She's been working on this more closely than I have.
Thank you, Mr. Daniels, and thank you, Senator, for the question. I think it's important to note that we already have Indigenous groups who are asking for this service, and there is growing demand to utilize this fiscal tool right across the nation. So in a environment where infrastructure development is certainly growing and at the core of many things that we're doing here in Canada, we would like to offer this service. And with the SPVs, we are one of the only groups that doesn't have the ability to lend to Indigenous groups currently, which in Mr. Daniels' opening statement was the very impetus and genesis for FNFA's existence. So we would like to be able to offer this to those who are demanding in order to accelerate infrastructure development as well as economic development right across this country. Miigwech.
So with this current government who want to accelerate development across Canada, so how much funding do Indigenous Special Purpose Vehicle will need?
Thank you for that question. They wouldn't need any funding. There's no funding required from the government, because they will be accessing the federal government's Indigenous Loan Guarantee Program, and so that would back up financing. So they would all be all of these projects will be financed on a business basis, whether they can produce income, and for the partners and the project proponents, that's what will happen. So there's no cost to the government to get this legislation done. Matter of fact, it's just going to give First Nations a really good option to get affordable financing, because we can actually get that financing pretty cheaply from the capital markets. So I think it just needs to be done quicker.
Okay, so since that's the answer that I expect, so while any good reason not to be included in the C15? They missed the deadline? What was the rationale not to be included?
That's a good question. I don't know the rationale of why it's not there. They're just trying to, I guess, pick things that can make impact quicker, and I don't know how this doesn't meet that. It does meet it. Like it's like my colleague Ms. Anderson said, we have projects that are waiting to access financing and to get the federal government's loan guarantee. So, in a matter of priority, I think this should have been done because there wasn't too many things in the budget that address the Indigenous issues, and this is one of them. And I think it's really important that we move forward quickly on it.
Okay,
question is for Mr. Daniels. My colleague and Senator Gignac did cover the topics I was going to bring up with you, but I'd like to hear you say how Indigenous businesses likely to take part in infrastructure projects go about it. Is there specialist knowledge in the communities, or is there more generalized knowledge within the communities?
Thank you for that question. Really good question. So I guess, I'll answer that with it depends. Depends on where you are, because not all First Nations are created equal across the country. Some are more advanced economically, and some are less so. If I look at the Atlantic Canada, there seems to be more advanced First Nations there that are looking at partnerships and equity types of projects. For example, like I can give you the Clearwater Seafoods, where 7 First Nation communities in the Atlantic purchased 50% of Clearwater Seafoods, which is the largest seafood company in North America and has an international market. So that takes a lot of complex negotiations and managing of such a very specialized industry. So in that regard, yes, they are developing. And matter of fact, Member 2 First Nation employs about 50% of the population of the neighboring municipality of Sydney. That's pretty profound when you think about that. The economic impact, like 50% of that population is working, they're generating a salary, and they're doing other things with that. And there's a spin-off from that. They also purchase St. John shipyards. So it's called New Dock, which is a shipyard, one of the oldest shipyards in Canada that services all types of different vehicles. So that's very specialized. Then if we go to the west coast of Canada, we have the Haisla First Nation, which has an equity participation in Cedar LNG project with Pembina Pipelines, a massive LNG project that will be selling its LNG product across all markets. And so we look at that. And so in between that, you got First Nations that are looking at hydro projects, alternative energy projects, wind farms, and so forth that they're partnering with. So there's a lot of skill. The First Nations that work with us are very skilled in doing this. The other First Nations need to get caught up, and they're working on that because part of our legislation, our sister organization, the First Nation Finance Management Board, is responsible for capacity building and establishing a standard for financial management that's equivalent to municipalities and other types of governments. And so it is increasing. We're seeing that more and more. And, with the Indigenous loan guarantee, there was a project that Stonelass project in British Columbia, where 48 First Nations took equity ownership in a pipeline, existing pipeline already. So there, it's there. It is there. Sometimes it takes more time, like even ourselves at the First Nation Finance Authority, we have to build up our capacity to look at these different projects as we have to analyze them ourselves and to make sure that the project is well and sound and that they're going to be able to repay their financing And so it's really incumbent on ourselves to do that. So I think it depends. And so there's a continuum of First Nations along this line where some are very advanced and some are not, and many are in between there. So I think that we are ready. The nations that want to participate in these projects are ready, and they have the skills and the capacity to do so. Thank you for that.
Merci beaucoup.